They sit and have no nose for hours with Jedediah bleeding as Dean stitches up his cuts. He sits T. on fear looking up as Jennifer pinches his arm. He asks her,
Did I have a phobia of needles?
Jennifer looks up and responds,
Yes. Why do you ask?
He just replied.
I forget.
Loretta asks.
Why'd you call yourself Jedediah?
He turns to her and asks.
You said to say, I'm sorry, Jedediah. Why did you call yourself that?
He looks away and says,
That was a nickname you gave me for when we were younger.
He leaves as Dean cleans up Malcolm's stump and heads to bed. 12 days pass and he wakes up seeing light shine through and shouts,
Daylight, rise and shine.
As he walks into the halls, he could hear humming, and he turns to look around, seeing the walls melt away into a void. He can see a room with his father sitting in a chair, all bloodied up and beaten.
I gave you a free home so you could save money, so you wouldn't have to go through the struggles like I did. Why did you sacrifice me?
Jedediah responds quietly.
I didn't. Look, I can fix this after I figure out how to stop it.
At what cost? Me? And your sister?
He can see his mother taking his father's place in the chair, clawing into her chest.
You would give us up after all you did?
No!
He pleads.
I've gotten this far. I can figure it out. Loretta's...
Why are you roping me into this? Because of you, I can't remember my boyfriend without reading a notebook. You broke me!
Jedediah rubs his head and says,
I swear, I didn't want this.
Tears running down his face as he looks the hooded figure with knives moans.
Tell that to the world.
He can see the world burning like a film strip, the white light coming towards him, hearing the song secrets that you keep playing as they come closer. Out of instinct, he blocks the light with his left hand. And he wakes up in bed, breathing heavily, looking at his burnt left palm blisters where the white flame had reached. He looks down, seeing his bottle of Jaeger all but gone. He would soon have to stay awake for long periods. Jennifer gets to the kitchen calling.
Daylight's up. We can head back with oh my god.
She spots Jedediah wrapping his hand as he mutters.
It's nothing. Trust me.
She quickly moves over it and says,
That looks burnt.
Look, it barely hurts anymore.
He finishes wrapping and clenching his hand to show the pain has lessened, even though his head was screaming in agony, and she knew it as he utters.
Let's get everyone up and packed before another rainstorm hits us.
He hurries to wake Malcolm and Loretta for their plan. On his way there, he decides to go to the lower floors to see if any deadites remained. He makes it to where he found the knife that stabbed Tommy. He looks at the wooden counter, noticing spots burned into it. He looks at the floor to see the same thing. He shakes it off to go get Malcolm and Loretta. After 2 hours, they finish packing up the supplies with Jennifer. Dean, Tim, and Taffeta move to their truck with Malcolm and Loretta in it. Jedediah stops them.
We're full up.
Jennifer asks.
How?
Jedediah answers.
The gas took up all the seats, except for the driver's seat and, well...
Jennifer gives a snarky look and says,
We were gonna split the gas in the trunks of the trucks.
Jedediah stands there in annoyance but sighs. After another 10 minutes putting the gas in the trunks of the trucks, Jedediah, Loretta, and Jennifer sit in the rear seats, him gripping Becky. Tim and Dean sitting in the middle. Taffeta and Malcolm sit in the front, Taffeta driving. And they leave, not noticing a blood trail from the young blood's truck. About 10 minutes out, the Alpha truck gets contacted by Springwood.
Are you there, Alpha Elder?
Kincaid answers. Yeah, we got caught in a rainstorm. We're gonna have to consider moving.
Yeah, listen. 3 of those young bloods weren't meant to be there. The people who voted had told us a day after you departed they had 3 different names picked. Also, we had reports of one of the young bloods outside with a broken nose. In the building, there were blood spots reported by the voters. Also, one of the keys is missing. Keep that truck in sight.
Kincaid looks at Kristen and changes the channel, right as a sandstorm begins. Back at the Youngbloods Inn, Jedediah gets the gun ready. Jennifer looks down with caution as the radio crackles through. Stay in sight, Youngbloods. A sandstorm seems to be starting. Jedediah quickly aims Becky at Taffeta and says,
Look, something bad will happen. I didn't want this, but you left us no choice. Take us to Michigan.
She is about to reach for her pistol, but Malcolm puts his wrist knife to her throat and shakes his head, and she starts to comply. Jedediah breathes heavily and says,
Believe me, I didn't want to involve any of you in this situation, but now that you're here, that's just how it is.
Dean tries to reach for Becky, but Jedediah points it at him and says,
Don't.
Then he aims it at Tim, and Jennifer strikes at him, punching him in the face. Grabbing at the gun, he head-butts her in the face. Loretta pulls out a bat and says,
Try it. I'll hit you if you try anything.
After getting a few socks in on Jedediah, then biting his hand, accidentally making him clenches on the trigger, firing, everyone but then screams. He head-butts her again, then slams her against the door, aiming at her and saying,
Drop all your guns and slide them over to Loretta.
She doesn't flinch. He then quickly, out of fear and anger, he points Becky back at Tim, the barrel touching the skin of his neck.
Do you want to risk his life, the one family that you have left?
She gives a subtle look and complies, pulling out her pistols and slides them over to Loretta. He then says,
Loretta, grab the tape.
She quickly goes under the seat and finds the gray duct tape, and he says,
Toss it to her.
She does. It lands in Jennifer's lap as he explains.
Tape your legs together. Then I'll lower the gun. Then I'll take the tape. Then I'll tape your hands together.
She nods and does that. After she is finished, he hands Loretta Becky and tells her,
Aim it at him.
She does as he holds his hands together, and in seconds she gets what he wants. She does the same as he takes the duct tape and wraps her hands up. He breathes heavily, grabbing Becky back, and says,
Okay, Michigan, please.
Aiming the gun back at Taffeta, who complies. As they drive, he notices Dean leaning next to the window in pain. He spots a hole in his shirt, blood oozing out of his left shoulder. He realizes when the gun fired, it didn't hit a window or one of the seats. Pulled over after the sandstorm calms down a bit, the elder class has stopped, seeing no signs of the young bloods. Kristen states,
Maybe they stopped further back.
Kincaid looks at her and says, Nah, they said it. The vote was rigged. Those three weren't meant to be here. Probably explains why they filled up their truck so funky. They wanted to take the truck. Mark, standing next to Joey, simply asks,
For what though?
Sheila simply answers,
Doesn't matter, they have one of our trucks and half the gas and trading supplies.
Joey pulls out a pen and paper and writes something on a sheet of paper and holds it out. So what? Let's get the gas we got back to town and get packing for Kissel County. Kincaid, then angry, says, clenching his fist, We need every bit of gas we have to make a move that big. Think, first we have to transport people and food. Then come back for the rest of the stuff, and the only things that can survive a trip like that from here to Florida. Kristen then finishes,
Look, we'll backtrack a bit, and if they aren't found in about an hour, then we find a place to stop. I have a way of finding people who don't want to be found.
Kincaid asks, What does that mean? She waves him off, and everyone else gets in the truck except Mark. Him hearing a whoosh noise, eventually he gets back in the truck out of fear of the sentinels being near. From a shadowy room, seeing a recording of the truck. An annoying voice speaks to the old, tall, well-dressed man.
Why help them? Why the sandstorm?
All will make sense in time. Gather your friends at the edge of Michigan. Bring me the one I spoke of intact.
The man hidden in the dark spots the older man look at his left palm, then closing his fist, pulling it down, and asks,
How do you know they'll be there?
Are you questioning me? Go.
And the figure behind him leaves as the old man looks at an image of Jedediah and states,
And so it begins.
letting the image stay there, having his mind echoes distract him. Back with the Youngbloods 12 hours later, a light rainstorm starts with Taffeta remarks.
It's starting to rain and Deadites could start slamming into the truck.
Jedediah looks up and says,
Once we see the sign for Michigan, then we stop.
Jennifer steps up saying in an annoyed tone,
Maybe if you explained why you want to hurry.
He looks at her and answers,
I have a person I need to meet for information. If we're lucky, this will be a win for everyone.
He looks at Dean and says,
Tim, check him.
Tim doesn't question it. He goes over to him and puts the back of his hand to Dean's forehead, warm like a heated pad. He answers,
Hot.
Jedediah sighs as Jennifer states,
He needs medical treatment.
They would put him under.
And that's a bad thing.
Jedediah says,
If you knew what Dean and I knew, you would say so.
He looks under the seat and finds the first aid kit, giving it to Tim, saying,
Do what you can, but don't you dare put him under.
Dean sighs and shivers. No one notices under the truck. Tommy, hanging on tight, him looking bloodthirsty, pulls out a machete, aiming it at the wheel. He breathes in heavily and stabs. The rear left tire pops, causing them to have to pull over. Everyone in this situation looking concerned, with Jennifer remarking,
Great. Stranded with no help, a man bleeding to death, the Deadites drawing near, and now a flat tire.
Jedediah simply remarks,
We get out and walk, finish cleaning him up, and then we move to the nearest shelter.
Jennifer looks at him in anger and fear.
You're insane.
Insane? No. Desperate? Yes.
Tim finishes up patching up with Wound, and everyone gets out, with Jedediah aiming his gun at the other four while Malcolm cuts open Jennifer's taped-up legs. He shrugs the gun to have them lead the way, Taffeta and Tim carrying Dean, with Jennifer leading the group. No one notices Jarvis crawling out from under the truck. As they walk, Jennifer looks at Tim and Taffeta, and they nod at each other. As they walk, they start to spot an old building looking similar to a mortuary. In a matter of seconds, Loretta stops and screams a bit, with everyone stopping and Jedediah asking,
What?
The tree just moved.
He looks out in the woods and say,
It's the wind.
She shakes her head as he says,
Come on, we have to keep moving.
And they proceed. Around 10 feet from the truck, Jarvis steps behind them, specifically setting his sights on Jedediah as he walks with his machete in hand, not noticing a branch slowly reaching for him. As he's about to slash at him with the machete, the branches wrap around him. They all turn to see Jarvis being lifted into the air, slashing at the branches. Jedediah simply says,
Didn't I kill him? How much shit can he survive?
He turns back around to see the other four running for the building as branches start to grab Malcolm and Jedediah. Loretta backs up, avoiding the grab as the branches finish wrapping up around the other two. Malcolm replies,
For the record, I blame you for this.
and they are slammed around into trees. Jedediah drops Becky on the ground. Jarvis is launched into the woods, hearing only a slam. Jennifer makes it to the door, biting at her duct-taped hands. She finds the end and starts to unwrap her hands free. By the time they make it to the door, she is completely free from the tape and opens it, holding it open for the other three. Tim and Taffeta drag Dean into the door, hearing the branches slam near them. They barely make it inside. As they shut the door, locking it, Taffeta sets down Dean. They hear a voice come out.
Look what I just found.
They all turn to see a rotting blonde who aims a revolver at them and asks,
Do you think it's loaded?
They all stand back as a rotting man in red shirt and blue jeans steps, and then a man in a dirty red-white striped coat, rotten as well, with a mustache. The red shirt speaks.
This lovely lady is Edna, and this piece of shit is Henry, and I'm Rufus. Now introductions are out of the way. Where's Morningside?
Everyone looks in terror. Back outside, Loretta picks up Becky and aims as Malcolm and Jedediah are slammed repeatedly into the ground and tree stumps, and fires black goo spraying out all over the two, but Malcolm's stump is free. He starts to cut at the branch around his good hand, black goo spraying on his face. then his legs dropping him to the ground, and he spots Jedediah dangling, about to be slammed into the tree trunk again, and begins cutting at the branches. In a few seconds he drops, slamming hard to the ground, with Loretta asking,
Are you good?
I think I broke a rib. Or all of them.
He gets up as they hear more tree branches coming at them, and they hurry to the door. Back inside, the four stay still as Tim asks,
Who?
Rufus, annoyed, rubbing his forehead in stress, peels his skin away and answers,
Morningside. Where is he?
Everyone stands there as Rufus turns to Edna and says,
Babe, kill one of them.
as she does a silent eeny meeny miny mo. Dean spots a fire poker and grabs it in secret. And right as she aims at Jennifer, ready to pull the trigger, they all hear Jedediah outside shouting and slamming on the door.
Open the fucking door!
Rufus smiles and says,
Maybe they know. Let's let them in.
he walks towards the door to open it, only for Dean to stab Rufus in the back through the gut, yellow liquid coming out through the front. Rufus pushes Dean backwards and turns towards him. He then picks up Dean by his hair and socks him in the face, knocking him unconscious. He then reaches behind his back, pulling out the fire poker. Once out, he looks at it, then Dean, and raises it over his head to strike Dean. Then Jennifer grabs him from behind, jumping at him to distract him. Leave Edna laughing, the shooting at Tim and Taffeta. They run while Henry runs after them. Rufus then slams Jennifer into the wall, knocking her off. He backs up as Edna gets close, aims, and pulls the trigger, only for the gun to click. She mutters,
Shit.
and Jennifer runs off, leading the two away. Back outside, Jedediah can hear the gunfire inside, and he turns back to Loretta and Malcolm, with Malcolm saying,
We need to get in. There has to be another entrance.
Jedediah nods, then looks up, hearing the trees wave towards them, and they move around the side. Tim, hearing Henry behind him and Taffeta, spots the running furnace, and he hurries over there. Taffeta running to the corner to hide. Henry steps in the room, looking around, giggling, and says, Oh, come on up, kiddies. Back with Jennifer, she is running from the two undead lones, hearing them giggle as they chase. Spotting a pickaxe, she takes it and swings at Rufus in the skull. He screams as yellow goo shoots out, then pulls it out, and he drops to the floor. She swings at Edna, who ducks and twirls out of the way like a highly evolved predator. Back outside, the trio spot a window that could reach, but need to break it open. Jedediah aims Becky, shouting,
Duck.
They do, and he shoots the window open. Reloading first, then each one by one jump through. They each get inside. The pain Malcolm and Jedediah experienced, making it difficult to get up, but they do. Jedediah looks around, realizing they're in a closet. They start to hear the undead noises from outside coming closer, so the three hurry to the door, running through it and slamming it shut. Hearing the evil slam from the other side, the three breathe heavily, but as they turn, they spot something odd. Two metal cylinders rising from the floor. Jedediah, confused, asks,
Is this common?
Turning back to Malcolm, he shakes his head. Jedediah puts his hand in between the rods. Seeing it vanish, he pulls it back out. Confused, he decides to walk in with Malcolm, saying,
You don't know where it goes.
but he doesn't care. He steps through, seeing an empty, dark gray room. He turns around, seeing the cylinders still there. He shouts out,
Hello!
hearing it echo. He looks around, not knowing where the room ends or begins. He looks forward, seeing a figure running towards him. He can't make out the shape or what it's saying, but he feels uneasy about this place. He turns around, running back through the cylinders, making back to where he was with Malcolm, asking,
What was it?
I don't know. A room? A man, I think? I couldn't make out what he was saying.
They look up to see Loretta, having a horrified look. As they look where the cylinders were, they are gone. No sign they were ever there. Jedediah simply remarks,
What's going on?
They hear Henry's voice from upstairs, and they collect themselves to move. Back upstairs near the furnace, Henry, still searching for the two, starts to whistle as he gets closer to where Taffeta is hiding, right as Tim drops something to draw him over to the furnace next to a set of coffins, one aiming at the furnace, which he quickly but quietly gets behind. Henry, hearing the noise, quickly moves to where it came from. As he slowly steps in front of the furnace, Tim gets red. to push the coffin into him, but he stops, then turns to look at him and smile. He stands tall to walk towards him, but from the basement door slams open with Jedediah aiming. Becky Henry turns around and says, "You?" He is then shot in the left shoulder, then the right shoulder, then the head, yellow liquid squirting all over the place. Then he steps in front of the coffin and Tim pushes, knocking him forward. To slide right into the furnace, he screams as Tim shuts the furnace door, gasping for air. Jedediah looks him dead in the eye and says,
"Since we took you hostage, I'll call this one even, but stop trying to kill us."
Tim nods as he turns to Taffeta and says,
That's strike 3 for you. Any more shit and you're done.
He leaves to go check on the others as Malcolm and Loretta sit and breathe. He makes it to where Dean is, finding him passed out but breathing. He tries to wake him up, but then in the next room he can hear Jennifer swinging at Edna and he hurries in. Jennifer, still swinging at the swift Edna, eventually stands there gasping as Edna stands up and says,
Don't try. Better than you ever tried. No one can take you this time.
She would have said more, but Jennifer quickly swings at her left eyeball and face, but she notices no resistance as the pickaxe pushes out over half of her face and leaves a massive hole in it. She backs up in terror as the face's freak laughs maniacally. But in seconds, the rest of her head is blown off, splashing yellow goo over Jennifer. He looking as it falls to see Jedediah breathing in anger and says,
Are we done?
She breathes in heavily as the two start to hear Dean shout,
You're not real!
The two quickly hurry, seeing Dean standing holding back his own hand, holding a knife, mumbling,
You're not real! You're not real!
Jedediah, knowing what's happening, shout,
Dean, wake up!
But all for nothing. His right hand planes the knife and dragging it to the right. Taffeta from behind shouts, and Dean drops dead, leaving everyone in horror. Back with the remaining elder class, they stop at an abandoned house and board up the place, with Kincaid asking, So what's your plan on finding them? Kristen sighs and replies,
It's gonna sound weird, but I have the curse, gift, whatever you call it. I can pull people into my dreams. Before my parents' divorce, I used to pull my father into my dreams when I had a nightmare. Anyway, I could use this to pull one of the young bloods in and find out where they are at, or if they are even alive.
Mark simply answers with,
Look, with everything that's happened to us, I don't think we'll find this crazy.
They all nod as she lays down and shuts her eyes to try to sleep. Back at the mortuary, they finish putting Dean's body into the furnace and shutting it. They all stand there in silence, with Jennifer looking at Jedediah, who just walks away, not wanting to focus on another death. He makes it to the main entrance, with Jennifer walking up and asking,
What happened to Dean?
He simply answers,
What would happen to me if I hit REM sleep, and something that will happen to you if I explain it in great detail.
She then continues with,
Look what is happening. What are you not telling me?
No.
Silence brews as he picks up the revolver. She replies,
No.
He looks at her and says,
No, you have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what I've done to get to this point. As far as I'm concerned, you have no right to know what those things are. You couldn't just go in the other car and go home. You left us outside to die, and now you think you're entitled to know what might actually be the full story. You ain't getting it.
He sighs, turning away as she says,
Who's Morningside?
He looks up, sweat shooting down his neck.
What?
Morningside? That's who they were looking for?
He looks around and she points at him.
You know who it is then.
He turns to her and says,
It's not possible.
What isn't?
There's only two possible people that they're talking about. One is dead, chopped back up, and reburied in his plot. Or it's me.
She looks confused as he explains.
That's why it's not possible. I only told Malcolm my name from my previous timelines. Jedediah Morningside. No one else would know that.
He then leaves her without another word. Later that night, he sits down holding Becky. Seeing Loretta holding her book, he breathes heavily, wondering what happened. Remembering the burnt countertop? What was he like here? What was she thinking about telling him about Mom? He settles on looking at his hand. How long would it take for him to be tired enough to try it? If it worked, how long would it take before he passed out? He hasn't used it for over 16 days, maybe more. He wants to try it. He holds out his hand focusing, then he can hear it. That slow lighting sound practically muted. He sets down Becky and makes it to the book, pulling it from her hands. He flips through the pages, feeling his head splitting. He makes it to 12 days ago, reading through the multiple deaths, the door, the tunnel, the kitchen, and he makes it to her writing.
I had a talk with Malcolm. I think I should tell Frederick about Mom. But not long after, the man he talked about with Malcolm had shown up, chasing us and attacking us. Then Frederick showed up, calling him Jedediah. Odd, I don't remember ever calling him that, but with my head, I forget everything I write down. But he drew the man behind the mask away as we ran. All we heard was his guts being cut open. We hid it until I went to sleep. I saw the hallway again like the previous times. Today, white light burned towards me. I could feel it on my skin as if it was 6 feet away from me. I swear, the closer I was, I heard something with conversation. Hearing your words, it'll be fine. Trust me. You'll be okay. Though, right? Of course. But then I heard a slightly different conversation. I know, but I'll go as far as I can. Hard to tell if these voices were conversations I would have or haven't had. The voices were distorted, unrecognizable. I didn't have much time to think about it. I found the portrait of Malcolm and me talking. I ran in. This time saying I would tell him. Hopefully, rereading this, I will. But I turned and froze time right when I saw the killer. I knew where Frederick would go, so I ran to the kitchen, grabbing a knife and setting it down on the wooden countertop. Apparently, whatever lightning surrounds me leaves burn marks behind. I ran back up and let events play out the same as before. This time ending with everyone who had survived up until that point, including Frederick. I decided to ask him why he said Jedediah. He claims I gave him this when I was a kid. Now I'll admit my memory isn't perfect, but I don't believe I ever called him that. And even if I did, wouldn't I have some recollection of this point in my memory? I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to bed. Before I forget why I'm writing this, I will finish this by saying I envy Frederick. He has something I don't. The ability to feel time pass. How can I ever recover from the loss of Dad if I can't feel a day pass? Yet he treats this gift like a curse. I've read earlier pages where one time he yelled at me wishing he could forget every day so he wouldn't have to grieve. But he forgets that I can only remember the time I tried and failed to save Dad. Well, good night.
He sighs as he feels blood slowly drops from his nose and his head pain is starting to get worse. He wipes his nose, closing the book and sliding it back into her arms. He looks at her sleeping well, and he will admit that he was not so different from this timeline version of him. He does envy her. He will likely never forgive himself for all the mistakes he has wrought, not just to his home timeline but all others, including making this one. He only hopes that if he can stop the world from ending, that maybe he can find some peace out of it. He lets time speed up again, his nose dripping blood on the floor. He wipes it away quickly, going back to Becky and holding it. Back with Kristen, she opens her eyes seeing her hometown, saying to herself,
All right, who should I try first? Well, Frederick seems to be in charge of the trio. Maybe I can scare him into some answers.
She breathes in and shouts,
Frederick.
Hearing her echo ring throughout the dream world. Jedediah feels something familiar. He stands up, looking around, and wipes his face, dropping back down, phasing through the chair, landing back into the boiler room. Hearing the furnace on, he looks around, shouting,
No, I stopped in time. I did not fucking fall asleep.
Then he can hear the familiar claw scrapes. He can hear the deep voice giggle as he stands there confused as Kristen runs and about to say something to Jedediah, but in seconds the hooded figure claws at her right arm, leaving 4 cuts. Somehow she knew this was real. She runs up to Jedediah and yells,
"What's happening here?"
He simply shakes his head and shrugs, then the hooded figure taunts the two.
Freddy, come here.
Beckoning with its left clawed hand, hearing the scraping of metal, Kristen runs at the thing. About to jump over it, the figure grabs her midair and shouts. Kristen, with a knowing, horrified look, looks down at the figure, with Jedediah somehow knowing that her knowing makes this more terrifying, as she chucks Kristen into the flaming furnace. She cries out in pain as a blue light flies into the figure, and it grunts in pleasure as a white light shoots out of it and into Jedediah, hearing Kristen's voice. He wakes up in a bedroom with no one around him. He sighs a bit of relief, thinking out loud.
It was a dream.
He laughs, rubbing his head, saying,
It was just a dream.
After a long chuckle with his hands covering his face, he drags it down and says,
I need to laugh the horror movies.
It was then he realized this room, it wasn't his, it was orderly for one. None of the stuff was his. He spots a note on the bedside table and reads,
Mom, Dad, I'm going to tell you something tonight. Please listen to me and know I love you. Vicky.
His eyes widen and says,
What the fuck?
He gets out of bed in a hurry, opening the bedroom door, spotting Malcolm hugging a lifeless body.
Becky?
He mutters, seeing her light there. Pale face, rope burned neck. He spots the rope right next to the two. He then hears shouting downstairs, spotting 2 older figures, a man and a woman, shouting at Malcolm, with the mothers slapping him, shouting. He backs up back into the room, thinking it will be safer, but as he gets back and he turns to see the clawed hand cutting through the mattress. He now realizes what is happening. He was inside Malcolm's dreams, and he had brought that thing with him. He slams the door shut, running down the stairs, and makes it to the front door, hoping to find Malcolm somewhere to wake them both up. But right as he makes it, he hears the phone ring. He is scared out of his mind, hoping that in some effed up way this was Malcolm trying to contact him. He picks it up, hearing a voice. Not Malcolm, saying,
Hello?
Hello?
He replies. The voice with joy says,
Oh, thank God you're alive.
I can certainly say I wish I wasn't, because then I wouldn't be here.
I need you to stay calm.
The voice proclaimed. It was somewhat comforting hearing the words.
We're going to get you help. We'll get you out of there. I want you to find a place to hide. Someplace safe.
But then all the comfort, he had left the room when the final words came out.
Where you can remember the taste of her kiss when you felt her neck break, you diseased cocksucker.
He wanted to remark on that. On how he thought it was somewhat humorous that he was the one making a reference to something this time. But he could feel the phone get wet by his ear. He pulled it away, seeing a long, unnatural tongue come out the bottom end, wrapping around his neck. He pulled on it, but it didn't loosen. He turned, hearing the bedroom door open, seeing that thing coming out of the bedroom, clawing at the paper-covered drywall, blood coming out of it, with the voice remarking, He keeps pulling as the front door opens. Malcolm enters the home, looking at everything, unfazed except for 2. Jedediah and the hooded figure. He wonders aloud.
What memories are you from?
The figure jumps at Malcolm and starts cutting at his chest and cheeks. Jedediah, out of fear and rage, pulls harder at the tongue, ripping it in half. He falls to the floor, spotting an axe by the TV. He grabs it, getting up, and slams it right into the hooded figure's head, knocking it off. As it struggles to get the axe out, Jedediah helps Malcolm up and says,
We need to wake up, like, right now.
Malcolm, spotting his dad smoking, quickly grabs the cigarette, then quickly burns Jedediah and himself. Jedediah wakes up to hear screaming from everyone, including Malcolm, seeing a cut on his cheek, chest, and even a burn on his hand. Jedediah looks at his own to see the event was real. Back with the elder class, Kincaid and Joey use a fire extinguisher to put out Kristen's burning body, with Sheila remarking,
What the fuck just happened?
Mark replying,
I don't know, but it's morning. We should deal with her quickly, then try the radio.
Kincaid grabbing the axe and chopping Kristen up. Back at the mortuary, Jennifer and Loretta patch up Malcolm. Jedediah wants to ask him what he saw, who he heard in there, and what happened to Becky. But he can't, he genuinely can't. All he knows and all he needs to know is Malcolm has lost a lot, probably in every timeline, and the only thing he had left. He still lost it. Yet he still continued on with his life. And now his life is at risk because of him. It was a risk before, but he thought he could keep the one thing inside he couldn't let out. Now it's taken 2 lives and Malcolm has been marked by death. Jennifer looks at Malcolm and asks,
What happened?
He was about to answer as Jedediah shouts,
Don't answer that.
Everyone looks at him as he states,
If you know what we know, then I'll come after you.
He reloads Becky and says,
Look, we have to be near somewhere by now, and it's daybreak. Now either you stay here and contact the elder class, or you can help us find the man we're looking for.
Taffeta replies,
Why would we help you?
He simply answers,
Strength in numbers. Last couple of times we split up, quite a few of us died. We're down to 6. You stay here, and something comes, you'll be down to 3. Only one of which is good in combat, the other at strategy, and you driving. But A, Jennifer can drive stick, and B, no truck now. So not the best options there. You can contact them using the radio before we leave. Tell them whatever you want. Then they pick you 3 up and we never cross paths again.
Jennifer stands tall and says,
I get Becky and the revolver. And if you stay true, we'll give you both guns plus ammo. But if I ever see you again, especially you, Frederick, Jedediah, or whatever the fuck your name is, I'll kill you.
Jedediah breathes in and lowers Becky to the floor and slides it over to her. She looks down kinda shocked and he replies,
Fair enough. Let's go.
She picks up Becky holding it tightly and nods. Back outside, wrapped up in tree vines, is Tommy Jarvis. He wakes up chopping at the vines with his machete, rising up in pain seeing the group leave the building, breathing in rage. Jennifer reaches the radio and says,
Elder class, are you there?
Static for a solid minute, but then a response. This is Kincaid. We're dropping like flies, and I cannot take any more bad news over. Jennifer thinks on it, looking at Jedediah both in rage and a strange sort of pity. She answers,
We lost another, sir. We got lost for a bit and one of our tires blew out. We're heading out to see if we can give you a proper location.
Silence hits as Kincaid simply replies, Okay, try to make it quick though. I don't need no one from the Youngbloods coming back. Not again. She hangs up and simply tells Jedediah.
All right, we're doing this. Where to?
He pulls out the S-Mart card and says,
That's the most likely place he'll be at.
He puts it away and they walk, with Jarvis stalking from the woods. Meanwhile, back inside the mortuary, the now cold furnace door slams open as a skeletal hand reaches out. About an hour of walking, everyone starts to get tired. Malcolm walks up to Jedediah and says,
Did you see it?
Jedediah looks at him confused and asks,
See what?
Malcolm then responds,
The dead girl?
He looks away and nods, with Malcolm genuinely terrified.
We were in the same dream. My dream. How was that possible?
Jedediah looks back at him and says,
I don't know. But we can't lose our heads.
Malcolm looks down, sweating in fear, and asks,
Did you have a timeline with anything that would help with that besides alcohol?
He looks back and says,
Hypnocil. But the thing is, I don't think it became as popular a drug now that Freddy isn't as well known.
Malcolm breathes heavily to calm him. Jedediah says,
We can take shifts of sleeping. If anything happens, we'll wake the other up.
He nods in response. They go another 20 minutes and Taffeta stops shouting.
Look. I'm tired. I haven't had a shower in around a week. And I feel something is following us. Can we go back to the truck?
Jedediah stops and says,
You can, and if anyone wants to go with you, they can. But it seems like earlier we agreed on safety in numbers, so I think you can go back by yourself.
And keeps walking for a second, then stops. He starts to laugh. Everyone is pulled, so they move up to see Welcome to Michigan Great Lakes Great Times. In the distance, everyone else rejoices, knowing it will be over soon. Jedediah does a prideful shout into the air, howling like a wolf. As they walk further into it, Jedediah spots a theater and says,
Oh, cool! I didn't know you guys had this movie.
With everyone else looking puzzled again and reading the theater poster, In the Mouth of Madness. Jennifer responds,
Neither did we. Let's go.
Jedediah swears as they leave he could hear laughing from inside, retorting,
Well, at least somebody's enjoying it. Weird that they're laughing this much, but meh.
And keeps walking. They spot a massive S-Mart, each stepping at the surprisingly intact door. They step inside with plants all over the wall. Loretta nearly touches a flower with spikes coming out a yellow-greenish color and almost touches it, with Malcolm stopping her, taking his blade, poking at it, saying,
Archifructus lionensis. That is really, really poisonous. One small cut can cause fatigue and hallucinations.
Jedediah recalls that name from a film and responds,
It's a natural predator.
trying to be clever, but no one paid attention. Jennifer stops the train and says,
Look, if we're gonna find your man, we're gonna have to split up. And believe me, I hate saying that, but this place is massive, so, Malcolm, you're with me, Taffeta, Tim, you keep him safe or I will kill you. And Fred, Jedediah with Loretta.
Each of the two groups split her off, not noticing a figure watching them, holding a walkie and whispering,
Yeah, sugar baby. We got 2 heading towards kitchen equipment, 2 towards software, and 2 towards hardware.
Looking at Jedediah and Loretta at that last location, the wrinkled bearded figure continues,
I've got the hardware.
A feminine voice with confidence speaks up,
I've got the software.
and in cowardice kind of annoying voice says,
Me and Davey got the kitchen. They won't want to mess with me and my candy cane.
Another voice speaks up.
Raul, please stop making jokes about your...
The elder figure hidden in shadows mutes the radio. In the software, Taffeta aims the revolver, with Tim calling out,
Mister, I don't know anything about Frederick, but we're not here to attack. We're here to talk.
Then in seconds the two hear chanting from a feminine voice. Then in seconds the two are lifted in the air, dropping the revolver, with a woman in an army-style clothing steps up and says,
Madeline Rothschild. Parapsychologist, demonologist, nurse, sorceress, former agent of TARD. I could tear the two of you apart now. What do you want?
The two float above her, terrified. In the kitchen section, Jennifer and Malcolm enter, with Malcolm slowly walking with her, and tells her,
Look, Jedediah can be a dick at times. But he didn't want to lie to you.
Jennifer turns at him and says,
I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, the Frederick I knew was a self-piter and would put himself at risk to prove he wasn't, only to keep complaining on how his dad died. Then to find out he's changed history for what I don't know, but knowing him, that's not where the lying stops.
Malcolm stops her and says,
I don't think he's healthy. She turns away as he replies. He is afraid to be alone. So he gives things he sees as meaningless things. Then he keeps secrets. Some he wants to tell you. I told him not to tell you about time travel. Our plan was to take a truck and come here because the world will burn out soon. He doesn't know when, heck, I couldn't tell you when. I'm not saying you should forgive him. But maybe just understand he's in a world he hasn't even grasped, because unlike you where you've lived your whole life and dad loved ones who know that pain. He shuts himself down because the only one he can talk to unless writing it down doesn't even remember what happened to anyone the next day.
He is about to continue until multiple boxes of toasters are dropped on Jennifer, knocking her down as a man with blue store clothing jumps on Malcolm, choking him with a plastic candy cane. Jennifer gets up, aiming Becky at the man, but has a pistol aimed at her head. Loretta and Jedediah make it to the hardware section. Seeing the guns section not far, Jedediah shouts out,
Ash, look, I know it's odd that I know your name, but I was hoping to explain that.
As they walk in, not one notices a metal hand reaching for a Daisy Powerline 880 air rifle. As they walk even more, Jedediah notices Loretta stop freezing, then her body drops still, like she's asleep, standing up. Then in seconds she looks around, freaking out, and says,
Look, Frederick, I need to listen.
Jedediah looks confused, but puts together and says,
I died again, didn't I?
Silence hits. Then he chuckles in annoyance as Loretta tells him,
We need to get behind cover now.
No, it's Jedediah, alright? Write that shit down because I'm done trying to be someone I'm not. And one more thing.
Bro.
No! Stop it, alright? There's no way I die this soon. You need to tell me right now how you can't remember anything I tell you, but yet you can go back in time.
She looks confused and says,
What the hell are you talking about? This is only my 30th time doing this. The first time I didn't even see Dad die.
He points at her as the figure aims, and Jedediah shouts,
Everyone wants to know who I am, yet they hate me when I tell them. So now it's your turn, sis. How is it that you couldn't save Dad, yet you keep saving me?
Jedediah, get down!
He's about to say something else, but the bullet shot rings out. Time slows down. She, in agonizing pain, grabs him and pulls him down behind a cart, then gets behind one herself. Time speeds up with him muttering,
How? What the fuck?
He finishes hearing the gunshots ring out. After another 2 shots, he shouts out,
Look, sir, we're on a bit of a tight schedule. We're looking for Ashley J. Williams. Bit old, gray hair, kind of pudgy around the edges.
Another gunshot rings, and he can see her nose bleeding, and she's barely awake. He spots a box next to him. The man sits behind the countertop waiting to hear a crash to the right of him. He fires at the entrance. Then, as he keeps aim at that spot, another sound of what sounded like an accidental stepping on broken glass. He fires again. Then he is charged at by Jedediah, grabbing the gun, one hand on the barrel, the other near the but the old man wore a blue shirt and jeans with a chest plate on the tethered clothing. Seeing the man's untrimmed beard, he is slammed into the gun rack behind him multiple times, then kicks the man in the nuts twice. He grunts in pain as he takes the gun, butting his head, knocking him down. He then chucks the rifle to the side and says,
Look, I just need to know if you see... Is that a sword?
The old man pulls from his belt an XVIA, aiming, then taking 2 hand stabs at Jedediah's neck. He takes his hand, stopping the blade as it cuts into his palms. He mutters,
I'm just looking for...
He looks straight at the man. Seeing his right hand metal like a knight's gauntlet, he mutters,
Ash Williams?
The man stops pushing, and he then pulls back. Jedediah chuckles with relief as in seconds the now hobo-looking Ash takes his metal hand, clenches it, and backhands the man, knocking him cold. He wakes up to cold water splashing his face. He looks to his left to see Malcolm and Jennifer tied up. He looks to his right to see Loretta, Taffeta, and Tim tied up, all to chairs. He looks forward with Ash sitting front and center, Madeline Rothschild to his left, and Davy and Raoul to his right. Ash states,
We've taken all your guns. Your weapons I was about to kill you with, but you said my name as if you knew me.
He stands up and states,
But I know we haven't. So start singing to the king, Jack.
Pulling out a double-barrel sawed-off shotgun at them.
Or you ain't getting shit. Now who are you and why are you here?
Jedediah sighs and says,
We've met.
but you don't remember because I undid it.
He puts the barrel in closer. Jedediah says.
Caroline, your wife.
Ash shakes his head.
I'm not married. The only girl I had was Linda, and she's long dead.
Jedediah, confused and saddened, replies.
So you didn't have Cheryl Williams.
He puts the gun closer.
Who told you that name?
He shouts.
You did! She was your daughter. You married a younger woman, which I didn't comment on before, but the age difference was not lost on me. You two hooked up, got married, and had a little girl named Cheryl Williams.
He puts his gun right up to his cheek and says,
You deadite bastard. You leave my sister's name out of your filthy mouth, you hear?
He then says,
You know we're not deadites.
He pulls the hammer back and demands,
How would you know?
He replies,
Because I know enough, but not everything. The deadites don't see time in a straight line like you or me. I only know what you told me in the previous timeline. Give me a whiteboard, a marker, and about 2 hours of your time, and I'll explain why and how we're here.
Ash grunts of annoyance and nods his head to Davy, who goes to get a whiteboard and marker. He mutters out,
Untie him, sugar baby. He's got a lot of explaining to do.
She waves her hand and the ropes untie. Ash then says,
Talk.
Davy handing him the whiteboard and marker.